In 1950, Tibet was invaded by the People's Republic of China. The communist regime in Beijing called this invasion a peaceful liberation. What resulted was the brutal murder of over 1 million Tibetans. Freedom of religion, cultural expression, and basic human dignities became illegal. For Tibetans in their homeland, life under Chinese colonial rule became hell on earth. Since then, the persecution has only continued. Despite every horror the Chinese state has visited upon the Tibetan people, they have remained completely unbroken in their peaceful determination for justice and freedom. On March 10, 1959, after having experienced nearly 9 years of Chinese state oppression and genocide, the people of Lhasa finally took matters into their own hands and rose up against the Chinese military, apparently against hopeless odds. The triggering event was a thinly veiled attempt on the part of the Chinese authorities to capture His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Many historians and CCP propaganda consider this uprising to have been a failure and a major military victory for Communist China. The reality couldn't be further from the truth. This brave uprising was an absolute victory for the Tibetan people. It gave His Holiness the Dalai Lama and thousands of refugees a brief window of opportunity, making it possible for them to escape occupied Tibet to the freedom in India. From there, the Tibetan government in exile was able to repudiate the illegal 17-point agreement that they were forced to sign at duress. And also, more importantly, this allowed the Tibetan people to be able to have a Tibetan government, a Tibetan culture, and a Tibetan religion that was outside of the control of the Chinese communist authorities. 63 years later, the bravery and massive accomplishment of the Tibetan people in 1959 has not been forgotten. In fact, it is a movement that is only getting stronger. Peace, justice, and truth will prevail. Human rights and freedom will one day return to the land of snow. Tibet will be free.
March 10 statement from Senator Edward Markey. What I'll do, I'll hold this. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Unfortunately, the Senator regrets not being able to be here, but I'm going to read the following statement on his behalf. Dear Massachusetts Tibetan community, I would like to send my warmest greetings to all of the members of the Tibetan Association of Boston. Today, as we remember those who rose up to protect the Dalai Lama more than 60 years ago, I thank all of you for your peaceful advocacy for the fundamental rights of the Tibetan people. We must all condemn the Chinese government for its continued attacks on the Tibetan people. The Chinese government continues its attempt to strip the Tibetan people of their identity. We are aware of Tibetan schools being forced to only teach in the Chinese language. A significant number of school-age Tibetan children have been forced to attend so-called special education schools run by the Chinese government. This for the exclusive purpose of indoctrinating the youth of Tibet to see themselves as Chinese and to abandon their own culture, identity, language, and religion. We also know that there are still too many political prisoners who are serving long sentences and enduring mistreatment and torture merely for voicing their political and religious views. This is in addition to the violence perpetrated by authorities to suppress peaceful protests in the last several years. Against this wave of repression, I will continue to steadfastly support the rights of the Tibetan people. Recently, I joined a group of bipartisan colleagues on a letter to Uzra Zia, Under Secretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights at the U.S. Department of State, shortly before her appointment as Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues, to advocate for U.S. policy toward Tibet that protects the right, autonomy, and dignity of Tibetan people. I have also commended the Biden administration decision to implement a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics due to attacks being committed by the Chinese government against the people of Tibet and many others. While a lot of effort has been made, there is still an overwhelming need for continual action. It is clear to all those who support a free and safe Tibet that we must redouble our efforts to protect the rights of its people. The resilience of the Tibetan people inspires those who seek a peaceful world that affords universal basic human rights. You are all a credit to your cause and to the state of Massachusetts. I am proud to stand alongside the Tibetan people during the challenges ahead. Thank you again for your determination. Thank you.
Dalai Lama!
Dalai Lama! Dalai Lama!
Invaders!
Release the pension Lama now! Release the pension Lama now! China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
China, China, China!
Out, out, out!
China, China, China!
Out, out, out!
When?
Now, now, now!
When?
Now, now, now!
Shame on the Chinese government!
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 Dalai Lama!
People die! People die! Dalai Lama! Dalai Lama! Dalai Lama! Shame on the Chinese government! Shame on the Chinese government! Tibetans! 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 Dalai Lama! Dalai Lama! In Tibet! In Tibet! In Tibet!
In Tibet!
In Tibet! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now! People die!
Release the pension Lama now!
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 Long live!
Dalai Lama!
Long live!
Dalai Lama!
Long live!
Dalai Lama!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Shame on the Chinese government!
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 Stop the murdering!
In Tibet!
Stop the killing!
In Tibet!
Stop the torture!
In Tibet!
Shame on China!
Shame on China!
Shame on China!
Shame on China! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now!
Chinese government!
Shame on
Chinese government!
Shame on the Chinese government!
Shame on Chinese government!
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans!
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans!
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans!
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Stop the killings!
In Tibet!
Stop the murder!
In Tibet!
Stop the torture!
In Tibet! Shame on the Chinese government! Shame on the Chinese government!
China, China, China!
Out, out, out!
Free Tibet! Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Long live! Long live! Peggy Tambo! Peggy Tambo! Yana Penny! Yana Penny! Shame on the Chinese government!
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 Stop the murder in Tibet!
Stop the murder in Tibet!
Stop the killing!
In Tibet!
Stop the torture!
In Tibet!
Shame on the Chinese government!
Shame on the Chinese government!
Shame on the Chinese government!
Shame on the Chinese government!